Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hello there everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today I want to share with you a burn salve. This is a salve that I make every summer to help heal burns, usually kitchen burns or herbalism crafting related burns from heat. This will also help with anything that is kind of a sucky inflammatory response. So bee stings or any sort of sting, maybe stinging nettle. And this should also aid with itchy reactions from bug bites or poison ivy, for example. So all around, it is a very useful salve to have in your home apothecary, and one that should be pretty easy to make and fun to craft. Every year I mix it up with a different style of recipe, shifting the ingredients used and usually trying something new just to fiddle with it and see how I like it a bit different. And this year was no different. And I gotta say, this year I'm really happy with it. It was super fun, and these ingredients should be fairly easy to get your hands on. But before we delve too deeply into this video is sponsored. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Squarespace is a website building and hosting company, and as I'm currently working on putting up a website, it is very exciting to get to partner with them. With Fluid Engine, a next-generation website design system from Squarespace, it's never been easier for anyone to unlock creative design. You get to start with a best-in-class website template and customize every detail with reimagined drag-and-drop technology for desktop or mobile. You can stretch your imagination when it comes to online design with Fluid Engine, built in and ready to go on any new Squarespace site. One thing I really love about Squarespace is their flexible website template. You get started with one of their professional website templates with designs for every category and use case. Then customize your look, update the content, and add features to fit your unique needs. You can make any Squarespace template do what you want, so your idea, brand, or business stands out online on every device and can be as unique to you as you dream. Another thing that I really love about Squarespace is the ease of working an online store. Whether you sell physical, digital, or service products, Squarespace has the tools you need to start selling online. So if this sounds interesting to you, go to squarespace.com/thegreenwitch to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring, and let's get back to the video. Alrighty. Welcome back. As I said, today I will be teaching you how to make an anti-inflammatory salve. This burn salve has 3 main herbal ingredients and then a handful of other basic kitchen ingredients. So let's start there. First and foremost, for the herbs that you'll need dandelion, calendula, and rose. When it comes to making salves, I am personally more fond of using either slightly dried or fresh herbs, and just in herbal medicine in general, that tends to be my go-to. In this salve, I did let everything dry first because I harvested all of my ingredients at different times. You can do this with fresh or dried, it's totally up to you. There is a little bit of risk with using fresh herbs that it may spoil during the process, and it will go bad quicker than if you are only using dried herbs. So it's up to you if you want to take that risk or not, but I do find that using fresh or partially dried herbs does tend to lead to more potency in the final product. In addition to the herbal ingredients, you're also going to need a couple of other supplies. This includes olive oil. I used about 2 cups of it, and beeswax. I like to do about 1 ounce of beeswax to a cup of oil, so 2 ounces in this instance. I also added a scoop or 2 of shea butter at the end. This is up to you. You don't have to add that. I often work with coconut oil and have recently been experimenting with shea butter. I just like to add another oil to give it some good feeling, or in this instance, a plant-based butter. However, this does not have to be added. You're also welcome to use a different form of oil if you'd like to. maybe jojoba or grapeseed or apricot. Any skin-safe oil will do. I personally prefer olive oil for my at-home workings just because it is the most affordable one that I've found that works well topically. So feel free to be creative, but also olive oil works great. There are two methods of crafting salves that I employ. In this recipe, I personally used both, but you are welcome to use just one. Either one will work well. I'll explain their pros and cons here in a moment. And you are also welcome to use both if you prefer. The first method used is a longer method. It is just a dark infusion sitting on a shelf for a handful of weeks. The other is a hot infusion, which uses heat to make it infuse a little bit more rapidly. Personally, in my practice, I like to use both. It allows for better extraction, in my opinion, and also gives me time to sit with the oil and observe it as it changes. All in all, either method is great. They will both result in a wonderful final product. Really, the biggest difference is the time that you want to give to the project. There are instances where using a hot infusion is the necessary option. In this case, I would recommend it given that calendula is a fairly resinous herb, and usually a hot infusion is a preferred way of working with resinous herbs, but you will be able to get away without that use if it is not super accessible to you. So to begin, let's start with the long infusion. The long infusion is just as it sounds, a long oil infusion. To begin, start by gathering your herbs. Chop them up really finely, as well as you can. And then place them into your jar, filling them to the top. I usually like to layer mine. I find that it just infuses that much better. Once you're happy with how many herbs you have tucked in there, pack them as tight as possible. Add your oil on top. It's not essential that you have a perfect measurement of oil or ratio to the herbs. Really, the best goal is to pack it as tightly as you can and fill the oil over top the herbs. Then seal off the jar and tuck it into a dark place that's ideally pretty temperature controlled. Personally, I keep mine in a cabinet, but you are welcome to keep them anywhere that fits that criteria. Then over the next 4 to 6 weeks, stop by and give it a little shake here and there to aid in the infusion process. Ideally, you do this once a day, but whenever you remember is perfectly fine as well. Once those 4 to 6 weeks have passed, take your jar out of your cabinet or wherever you've had it, take off the lid, and peek at that beautiful infusion. Now it's time to start the hot infusion. If you are just jumping to a hot infusion, it begins the same exact way that the long infusion does, by layering the herbs and oil. But after that, instead of putting it into a cabinet or a dark place to infuse, you put it on the stove. Now, in this instance, I didn't have the most ideal materials to do a hot infusion the way I prefer to, but what I did will work in a pinch. Typically, I prefer to work with a double boiler setup, and I usually make this with a pot, a jar lid ring, and a jar on top of it. It's certainly not the fanciest setup in town, but it does work well. Unfortunately, I didn't have any jar that would fit in the pot that I could use at the moment, so instead I just poured the herbs and oil directly into the pot and kept it heated on a very, very low heat. It's essential to watch it carefully and not let it burn. especially when it isn't set up as a double boiler. So if you go this route, which is perfectly fine, just be careful and keep an eye on it. Either way, you want to keep it on a fairly low heat and don't let the herbs get all too warm. We aren't trying to cook them, just help them to infuse. Keep an eye on them, stir them every so often, and allow this to cook for about 4 hours if you have the time. 1 hour will do the trick if that's all you can do, but 4 hours is ideal. Once that time is up, pull it off the heat, cover it up with a towel, and leave it to infuse overnight. And the next day, it's time to make this oil into a salve. To do this, begin by straining the herbs out of the oil. The best method I've found for this is to take a clean jar or empty out the jar that you maybe have your herbs and oil still in and wipe out the herbs. Add a tea towel into it or a cheesecloth, and then pour the herbs and oil on top of this. This can certainly be a fairly messy process, but that is kind of part of the fun. Just make sure while you're doing it that you're squeezing out every last drop of that oil from those herbs. That is the especially potent part, and that's exactly what we want to use in this salve. So once you have everything strained, put the oil back into that double boiler situation setup I explained earlier and add your beeswax. As I said before, I had 2 cups of oil, so I'm going to add 2 ounces of beeswax. Feel free to change this up a bit. If you're in a colder climate, you may want to use less beeswax. If you're in a warmer climate, you may want to use more beeswax. It all depends on preferences and environment. And then from here, just watch it, allow it to heat up slowly, and keep stirring until the beeswax is fully melted in. Then turn off the heat, pull it off, add in any extras if you want to, such as the coconut oil or the shea butter. Along with any essential oils that you may want to use. This recipe kind of smelled like potato chips, and I don't know about you, but I do personally prefer my salves to smell a little bit different than potato chips. I don't know what exactly gave it that scent, but in this case, if you want to shift it, just adding some essential oils will do the trick. Any of your choosing, well, as long as they're safe topically. And then divvy it up into your jars or tins that you want to keep the final product in. This time I just reused a couple of glass jars. And then all that's left is to let it set up. From here, it is ready to use. Salves are one of my all-time favorite preparations, and a burn salve is something I always want to keep in my back pocket. So I hope you enjoyed and are gonna get some use out of this. And honestly, I'm just glad to be making more salves. Now, before we close out, I do want to mention I wrote a book. This book will be coming out soon, in the middle of October on the 17th in the USA and about 6 weeks later everywhere else. It is out for pre-order now, and it's all about herbal magic and green hearthcraft. And within it, I have 50 spells and recipes. Some are similar to the one I shared today, and others are more witchy instead of more herbalism-y. So there's a good mix of both in here. It also has an entire section on base recipes for herbal remedies, if that's something you're interested in. So I won't talk about it too much here. I will be doing a video in the next couple of weeks sharing more about it, but I do want to just mention it because it's very exciting that it's finally coming out. And I will include the pre-order links down below if you're interested. Beyond this, I also have a Patreon. There I share art, herbal profiles, book recommendations, and monthly workshops. It's really what keeps things rolling over here, so it really means a lot, all of you over there. But I know it's not for everyone, and that's perfectly okay. However, if you want to see more content from me, I also have another channel. There I share way more herbalism and magic and all of these fun things. So both of those will also be linked down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day, and I can't wait to see you again soon.